This video is not intended to encourage or glorify any kind of drug use. The sole purpose of these videos is to educate you on the dangers of what these substances can do to you. Please do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video. I repeat, do not do any of the acts mentioned in this video. My main channel, Tales from the Trip, recently got terminated, and I need your help to get it back. Please sign the petition that will be linked in the description box below. Thank you to everyone for helping me out already with the thousands of signatures and people who message me on Instagram or wherever. Also, continue to tweet to Team YouTube on X about how this was a mistaken termination. I love and appreciate every single one of you. So let's get into the video. I was left home alone for a week while my family was out of town. I was 18 and weighed 122 pounds at the time. This was my first time getting high besides accidentally taking a bit too much Benadryl years ago. I took 2 pills, each containing 60 milligrams of DXM HBr and 1200 milligrams of guaifenesin at 2:30 a.m. I laid down in bed and put on some music. After a few songs, I began to notice that they sounded much different and had a weird tone that wasn't there before. That was about the time the dissociation started, although it was fairly weak considering it was only 120 milligrams. Not long after that, I managed to fall asleep and woke up at around 8:15 a.m. When I got up, I felt extremely nauseous if I made any movement. Eventually, I got up and carefully made my way downstairs. I sat on a chair and noticed I was very sweaty, but also freezing. This was when the experience became a nightmare. I collapsed on the kitchen floor and started puking violently. The vomit was coming out of my mouth and nose and felt closer to acid reflux than vomit. I think I managed to puke about 3 or 4 times before my stomach was completely empty. Then I walked up to my bathroom, which was a struggle as it felt as if the stairs were moving away from me with each step I took, almost like I was walking back onto the beach from the ocean. As I ascended, I went into the room opposite the bathroom and sat down. I sat down and noticed I was even more sweaty, and I left an imprint of my back on the chair with my sweat. After I took a shit, I felt way better, albeit shaky, and took care of some things. I went out for breakfast and my shakes and sore throat were largely gone. This almost certainly would have ended even worse if I had taken any more than I did. I got a bottle of Robo tablets delivered. They came around 9 a.m. and I started having some as soon as I got them. At first I had 10, 300 milligrams, which is where I usually begin to feel the effects of dissociation. After 30 minutes, I was feeling pretty good, so I decided to have another 10, now at 600 milligrams, which is where it becomes noticeable to other people that I am high, and closed-eye visuals and bodily sensations become more noticeable. At this point, I was feeling pretty high and reckless, so I had another 5, bringing me to 750 milligrams. I decided to put on some trippy music and close my eyes. Would feel like I was slowly falling down a tunnel, and my brain felt disconnected from my body, so I'd feel like I was floating and weightless. I heard my grandmother talking to my mom, so quickly decided to say hi and give her a hug to not raise suspicion and tell my mom I'm not feeling well so I could stay in my room. I then took another 5, now at 900 milligrams. I decided to enjoy the closed-eye visuals for a while, as I knew I was getting into another dangerous territory. When I'd close my eyes, I'd see an alternate version of my room and feel like my body was gliding and would see random cartoon characters and random hallucinations on blank surfaces. I kept taking 1 to 10 tablets throughout the day until I was at 1650 milligrams, where I started to forget the rest of the day and was confused and was talking to myself. When I'd close my eyes, I'd see myself and my room, but my bed was spinning and people or cartoon characters, usually from The Simpsons, would come talk to me. The next day, I realized it was a day before my birthday and was still high from the day before, so dosed 300 milligrams when I woke up. I remember near nothing from this day besides seeing animations, usually of The Simpsons, play out when I looked at blank surfaces, and thinking I was talking to non-existent people for brief moments, and had 750 milligrams throughout the day, and seeing animations play out on the floors and walls of the toilet and my room. My birthday, I woke up feeling like shit, and for some reason, completely sober besides closed-eye visuals and DPH-like visuals when I look at blank surfaces. I realized I only had 30 Robo tablets left, so I decided to have them in doses of 15, 450 milligrams, around an hour apart from each other. I was profusely sweating and looked like I had smoked crystal meth. I had not eaten or slept for over 2 days, coming up to 3, yet I had to keep spending hours on the toilet where I'd get insanely sweaty. My mom saw me and threatened to call an ambulance around 2:30 p.m. I decided to have a shower, and my mom's mate came over along with a couple of my mates to get drunk. We had a power outage, so started profusely sweating again since there were no fans, and it was an incredibly hot day since I live in Australia. I wasn't allowed to drink because of how fucked I looked, but was gifted some weed. I could barely speak. I tried to speak, but just random noises would come out, and I kept vomiting. I decided to get stoned and was feeling a bit better, but everyone was obnoxiously drunk, and I just wanted to lay down and sleep the day off. I felt distant since I couldn't talk, and people were telling me to speak. Luckily, everyone was really drunk and distracted, but I didn't go to bed until 4 a.m. I took 50 milligrams doxylamine to try and sleep, but couldn't. I was finally able to lay under a fan and try to sleep, but had to keep going to the toilet to either shit or vomit, and my skin was so hot to the touch, like my organs were on fire, and was profusely sweating. I wasn't able to sleep until 11 a.m. and barely realized I fell asleep until I opened my eyes, and it was 7 p.m. I was finally feeling a little bit better 2 days later, so I decided to drink some alcohol and smoke weed. I felt way more fucked up than usual quickly, as the DXM must have still been lingering. I watched a movie and went to bed around 10 p.m. A day later, I woke up with a bit of a hangover, so I had 8 milligrams of Klonopin and 300 milligrams of pregabalin. My stomach was feeling terrible and had to use the toilet because of robo-shits every 10 to 20 minutes, which concludes the trip report of ingesting 3,000 milligrams of DXM in just over 2 days, trying to reach plateau sigma, which I didn't, and instead thought I was going to die. I know what I did was incredibly stupid, and will treat DXM and drugs with much more respect from now on, as my HPPD is much worse, like constant DPH visuals on walls, and feeling dumb mentally. This story takes place during one of the darkest times of my life. I was a full-blown addict, smoking weed as much as I could a day. Around this time, I was trying to get away from all my other substance issues, and unfortunately rekindled my heavy DXM. Having just recently gotten out of rehab, and once again failing at the relationship I claimed I wanted, I began to spiral. I was always into meditation, and found that it could potentiate the effects of DXM to an almost infinite amount. This is one of those instances. I woke up one morning feeling alienated, depressed, and suicidal. I began to fantasize about that sweet taste of grape Delsum. I loved the taste and never had any trouble chugging it down. I put on my clothes, grabbed my skateboard, and headed down to the nearest grocery store, which was literally 0.2 miles away. I went to the cough and cold section and proceeded to steal 2 5-ounce bottles of grape Delsum. This store was almost always in stock, which was a major reason for why my addiction was so bad. I made my way home and decided it would be a good idea to chug down both of these bottles. I savored the sugary grape flavor, then put on A Dark Machine, an album by Shock One, my favorite album of all time, and waited for its effects. 2 hours later, I began to feel heavily dissociated, extremely euphoric, and in a heightened state of consciousness. I decided now would be an excellent time to start my meditation. I hobbled my way over to my altar and sat in front of my organite pyramid in a half lotus position. I began by grounding myself and allowing my pyramid's energy to flow to me. I began to feel a golden healing aura float around my body. It resonated with my vibration and began to lift my frequency higher. I intensified my meditation, starting at my root chakra, alternating between breaths of fire, alkaline breathing, and breath retention. I continued this exercise until I reached my crown chakra. This is where my experience truly began. After finishing my last round of retention, I was dragged upwards through this white light, almost like a tractor beam from Star Trek. I moved through my head, out through my roof, past my neighborhood, until eventually I was standing above the earth itself. I am in no way a flat earther, but what I saw changed my perspective completely. The earth was entirely flat with all continents facing upwards towards me. There was a bubble surrounding the earth that looked like the water that sits on top of a lake. This bubble was seated somewhere in the upper atmosphere, and I was being pulled up towards it. I eventually reached it, and I felt this cold sensation run through my body as I ascended through it. I reached the other side where I arrived into a palace-like building. There were beings traversing the area, going up staircases that led to oval-shaped doorways. In front of me were a couple of entities that for the life of me I cannot remember what they looked like. They spoke to me telepathically saying, "Hello, we are glad to see you here. He wants to speak to you." I responded, "What? Where am I? Who is he?" They didn't say anything else and proceeded to move me up one of the staircases. We stood in front of another oval-shaped door. However, this one was much bigger than the rest. They ushered me in, and I will admit, I was a little nervous. I had no control over my spatial movements, however, and they gently forced me inside. Upon entering the room, I was struck with a level of euphoria 1,000 times that of MDMA. I felt a sense of peace and tranquility I had never thought possible. Then, I saw him. Standing before me was a humanoid figure made solely of pure, almost binding white light. He stood hundreds of feet tall with proportions similar to that of an adult male. I cannot stress enough the energy that radiated off of this being. I felt as though I were being crushed by the sheer strength of its power. He waved his hand towards me, and I began to rise towards his head. I felt that euphoria increased dramatically the closer I got towards this beacon of light. Then he spoke. "Welcome. I forgive you of all your sins. You are reborn into a child of mine." I felt as if my soul were instantly purged of everything I held on to. I began to cry. "What did I do to deserve this? Why do you love me so much?" He comforted me, saying, "Everything has happened as it should. Your every mistake, your every success has been planned." I continued to cry, and he said, "Isaiah, you are one of my most important soldiers. I sent you on this mission. Your improvement in this life has been incredible to see, but there is much work to be done." Firstly, stealing is wrong no matter who it's from, he continued. Although it was from a corporation, the act lowers your vibration. As the sentence was finished, I received a telepathic image that filled my mind's eye, an image of Robotab's HBR. Buy and use these for the next part of your evolution. Continue to work on yourself, and I promise I will bring your lover back into your life. Earth can be a heaven if you allow it to be. All will work out, just have faith. With that, the door opened, and I began to be pulled back towards it. I thanked him profusely before I was taken to another room. This one was filled with chairs surrounding a long table, like an office meeting room. There were a few entities seated, and one standing by a holographic board. I was placed in the middle of the table, facing directly center of the board. The entity standing spoke again telepathically. "It is my job to explain your mission. We as a collective are trying to usher the Earth into a new era, a new Earth. This shift will cause miracles to happen, dreams to come true. You see the picture? That's where you and the other starseeds come in. All consciousness is connected, and individual vibration affects the whole. Spiritual warfare isn't exactly what you think it is. All we need you to do is raise your own vibration, focus only on you." The others will do the same, and the whole will follow with us. Make your music, spread your kindness, your love, and your vision. You can do this. You both traveled light years for this task. Take care and love one another. With that, I was transported to what I can only describe as simultaneously a flashback and a flash forward. The same event in two different time periods, two different places, with everything exactly the same. It was me, surrounded by dark-skinned entities all celebrating. I am black, and I assumed they were family as their energy felt very familiar. I looked to my left, and there she was, the soul I traveled billions of miles for. We stood under a wedding altar, I assumed after just having spoken our vows. I looked at her and began to cry. We embraced, and I was shown the same kind of vision. This time, it was me and her bringing a daughter into this world. Growing up, I was always against having children, but seeing this felt so right. In that moment, I knew I would do everything in my power to have my family. Her name was said aloud, and I was transported back to the lobby I had originally entered. The same beings that greeted me were now wishing me farewell. I was lowered through that same beam, through the same bubble, through my roof, and back into my head, where I opened my eyes. Damn, did I really just meet God?